So, there are cold hardy cactus. You need to know the type of cactus. Just because it's a cactus, it may be a tropical cactus like this.
That's not good for here.
No, and this...
that's indoor.
That's indoors. And actually I have a picture in a neighborhood of all these little guys grafted in the front yard that they planted. So it'll be fun to watch them die. And there are tall ones, there are tree-like cactus, there are dwarf cactus that are very small, and many cold hardy ones. So I have pictures of cactus at 7,000 to 8,000 feet elevation in Colorado and Arizona. And so they can take cold, but you have to have the right ones and know which they are. So like with anything, you have to do your homework, because just because somebody sells it here doesn't mean it's... I was just in a store here in town, and they were selling euphorbias, which are the African equivalent of cactus. They're related to poinsettias, as coral cactus. Well, they're not cactus at all. And these happen to be grafted ones. And so you have to be really careful, because they'll label anything, and people, you know, don't do their homework, and then they want to know why they die.
Mm-hmm. So is this cacti? If we grow them and sell them here, where's a good place to? We get them from Mexico too. Is that a good place to? Do we import a lot of these?
Well, most cactus are grown either in Arizona or California.
Okay.
We used to, and I have some cactus that my mother had that were, 35, 40 years ago, we were importing just probably hundreds of thousands of cactus from Mexico. They were just going down and tearing up the desert and importing them in. And cactus are all long-lived. My mother put them in little pots like this, and 30 years later, when she passed away, they were still in the same pot. She had never fertilized them. She never watered them, because it rained half the year in Florida, so she didn't bother to water them. They drained well enough. They didn't grow either, but they survived. And so they're real survivors, and they can last a long time if you take care of them.
So why did my cacti at a certain time of the year get the little flowers, the beautiful flowers? What causes that? Is that the will to live, or the...
Well, no, flowering is a seasonal thing in cactus.
Okay.
And so some cactus, depending on which hemisphere they're from, will have a different season to bloom. Sometimes it's related, maybe you remembered to water it, maybe you added extra water, maybe the humidity was higher for some reason. There are different things that trigger blooming. Usually it's a seasonal thing. And so some are spring, summer bloomers, some are fall and winter bloomers. And so it just depends on where the cactus came from. And of course there are other factors, you know, of weather and whatnot, because they are seasonal. And they're very slow growing. Some cactus, saguaro cactus for example, may take 50 to 75 years before they bloom and put on arms from seed. And they're opportunistic in there. You know, in the wild they've recorded that saguaros will only grow less than an inch in 10 years. But what they're finding now is that in that 10 years they may have only gotten 1 or 2 years of rainfall. And I have a colleague in Arizona that says that he can take from seed to the size of a golf ball in a year or less a saguaro in a greenhouse with high humidity and lots of water and fertilizer. So it depends on... They have evolved so that they can survive in harsh conditions.
Oh,
and they're not going anywhere, so they don't have to grow fast.
Yeah. Now, is it true you have to plant them in a certain direction? Like the ones that are like my hand? What are those? The flat ones, the paddles?
Oh, the opuntium, or prickly pear. That's partially true, and this is the thing, we get information that isn't complete. If you're going out, if I'm going out and I'm transplanting any cactus, or any plant, but especially cactus, because people forget that cactus sunburn in the desert, and they can sunburn bad. And so you go into a nursery, and you don't know what orientation that cactus is growing in the nursery that sold it to the chain store or to the retail nursery. But if you go out into somebody's yard, not out into the desert, because it's against the law to harvest wild cactus, without the right permits.
Right, because I had to, for our public library here, when they were doing work on 160 over at the Tacopa Cutoff, they had an area where they had disturbed the ground, and they took all the natural vegetation and put it off to the side there. I had to get permits from, I forget, it was at BLM,
well,
and also
forestry or
DEP to transport them.
Right. It depends on what the land is, who owns the land, who's doing the work. There's a lot, and they can call the extension office. We have that information, and that's one thing they'll learn in Master Gardeners, because we talk about that.
Yeah, because I had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, and what I brought over to the library, a whole conglomeration of things that they had, about 60% of what I had there took, and it's still alive. And I watered it like once a week for like 6 months. Right. Till it was established, but still I lost like a third.
And you will. Now, where there are active cactus clubs and whatnot, like Tucson, Arizona harvests thousands of cactus every year, and they have the permits, and they go out and harvest them, and then they have sales, they have they give them to schools and whatnot, and so, but you have to have a tag on them. You have to buy the tag, and the tag is about $5 a piece for each tag. And that tag, and one of the things you can do is that you can put that tag on. So we're harvesting this because we don't have a tag. We're going to harvest it from your yard because you've given it to me. This is the scenario. And so I go out in the yard and I say, well, which way is north? And I find north, and I put a tag on, and I mark somehow, either with a little bit of magic marker, preferably with a tag that's rubber band or stringed on, north. Now, when I come to my yard and I'm going to replant it, then I find which way is north, and there's no secret on north. It's easy to remember north. And you can mark south as long as you put it in the same direction. Right, that's the important thing. So I find north in my yard, and I point the cactus that way, and you'll be less chance of it sunburning. Now, if it was shaded at your yard,
ooh,
and then I go and put it in full sun, then I may want to put shade cloth over it for a while. And we did that with some of the saguaros that we transplanted at our office in Las Vegas.
I remember Bonnie Brown from the China Ranch. She was thinning out her cactus garden in front of their beautiful home. And I was down there one time, and there were a whole bunch of the cacti over there, and they're all shriveling up, and they were just laying there. Are you going to use those? No. Think they'll take if I bring them back home? Yeah, probably. And almost every one of them took that I planted.
Well, and it's interesting, and we all forget. I cut some cactus that somebody was getting rid of. They said, do you want them? And I cut them, and I threw them in the back of my truck, drove to the office, and within a couple of hours, just laying in the back of my truck at this orientation instead of this orientation, they were already sunburned on that one side.
Oh, okay.
And so you have to be careful. It's not just the orientation of where you plant it, but also to cover them. If you're laying them down and they had been standing up, then you have and we see this in cactus in the landscape. If some cactus will get trichoceras sometimes, will get too heavy, and they'll fall over, and then they sunburn where they now are at a different exposure. But then that's all right. They start to grow back up, and they're fine.
Now I can make them rot too by putting too much water in there?
Yes, and one of the most important things is having good drainage. In the summertime, if you're in a container with good drainage, it's really hard to overwater them and rot them. Or if you're in a greenhouse, a cactus nursery with a greenhouse that even heats up to 100 in the wintertime, they're okay. Wintertime, you want to pull back on the water, moisten the soil, watch them. You don't want to stress them. But non-Mojave natives in the landscape will need more water than Mojave natives. But you want good drainage. And anything that we plant, if you're not sure about the drainage in your yard, dig the hole, dig it twice as big as the root ball, at least, as deep as the root ball, fill it with water and time it. And if it doesn't drain really fast, then you need to find another place, plant it up on a mound, because cactus,
on a mound,
cactus, or put a chimney in. You know, like a French drain, just dig a smaller hole deeper down and put rock in it,
right,
and let it drain. So rotting is a real problem. We do, when our cactus get, the prickly pear cactus gets stressed, we get cochineal scale on it. It's easy to tell because you come in with a stick and you poke it. It looks like white stuff growing all over. If it pokes, you poke it and squish it and it turns red. That's cochineal scale. You just squished it. And it's a little bug that used to be sold for, the Spaniards sold it in Europe to dye robes and clothing of the aristocrats.
Interesting. Wow. So this, you'll learn this and other things with the Master Gardeners, right?
More than you'll ever want to know.
Wow.
At least for me, because I teach both cactus, I teach about palm trees, turf. Not one of my favorite subjects, but
turf.
I teach about
Grass?
turf. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm not a big turf person in the desert, but there is a place for it. It's kind of hard to play golf or football on rocks, so.
Yeah, the bounce, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to play soccer with. But we have a full gamut of classes that will acquaint you whether you're a newcomer or been here for a long time in the desert.
And that's at the Cooperative Extension in town here on Calvetta and Dandelion. What's the number, you know? Already 751?
Yeah, 727-5532.
Or 727?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't that right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 727.
Okay. How many more minutes we got? We have 3 minutes? Okay.
Well,
we can start wrapping it up, and
yeah.
you could talk about which one.
Let me show you these little fun gardens. This is, I had one with actually agaves, you know, the big agaves that you see out in the yard. Well, seedling ones you can do. And this is kind of fun also. And all of this is a bonsai dish. This is a bonsai dish.
Oh, that's a little bit better.
Okay. We got lots of competition here. Okay, nice bonsai dish. And then all I've done is I've put 6 of these Horticultures. They kind of look like agaves in here. Stone mulch on here. And one of the great things when you're potting any succulent or cactus, I pot it shallow. I don't bring the soil all the way up. And so I'll bring the soil up to about here.
Mm-hmm. About an inch and a half from the
okay.
There you
Sorry,
go.
guys. And leave part of the root ball exposed. And then to hold it in place, I put in rocks that will drain quickly.
Oh, okay.
And that's what you want. You want the rocks to drain, help it drain. And a good point, and I know we're closing up, is that whenever I buy a cactus or succulent now, the first thing I do when I get it home, whether I'm going to put it in the yard or leave it in the pot for a while, is check it because they plant it too deep and in heavy soils. And so you're apt to rot it if you don't check it. And so I take it out, I plant it shallow with part of the root ball exposed, and then I cover it with these small pea gravel, and then it's done right.
Well, excellent. So you can learn these things, these little tips from ML and the other folks over at the Cooperative Extension in town here, and Master Gardeners. Their classes are coming up really quick, another week or two. Another week, I think they're starting. Was it the end of August?
I think it's the end of 1st of September.
1st of September.
I have to look at my calendar because I teach the first class.
Oh, you better.
I better remember. Yeah. It's an interesting thing about a professor. They have a tendency to notice when you don't show up to class.
Oh my God, yeah. So if you got any questions, folks, just ask the good people. Debbie's taking over for Diane. She retired, Diane Herndon, over at the Cooperative Extension. And
great youth program with the 4-H. We have
the 4-H, and that's what was her forte before she took over the Cooperative Extension. Yeah, if you have kids that want to get involved with planting with animals and things, Cooperative Extension. Thank you, ML, as always, and we'll see you again in the near future. And we'll see Maria, hopefully next week, if we can drag her up here. So thanks a lot, and we repeat on Fridays at 12:30. Thank you for watching, folks.